Welcome to the first episode of Capitalize the B.
Oh, I didn't know it was the first.
Yeah, you're the first one. I am Jefferson Elson. I am the editor and chief creative at Jobber King. And I am here today with Johnetta Elzie, who is an activist, a commentator, a writer, and a cultural icon, if I do say so myself. Welcome, Johnetta.
Hello. I'm a cultural icon. Okay.
Yes, an icon amongst schools, darling.
Well, you know what? That bullhorn photo will not go and leave the internet. So that is icon status, if you ask
me. Exactly. Claim it. Speak it.
Name it and claim it.
So yeah, Johnetta, as I was saying earlier, essentially what WikiWeed has done is they've asked me to kind of curate a series of interviews around what felt relevant to me during Black history. And for me, I have been kind of sitting in a space where I am just trying to process Blackness as full as possible. I know my Black experience is very complicated. And so, you know, when I'm sitting around thinking about what does it mean for me to be Black, I'm always curious, what does it mean for Blackness to exist on a full scale? And so we came up with these 4 ways that Blackness exists and will exist, where we are, where we're going, where we've been, and what we've done. And so for the where we are section, I really wanted to speak with an activist, because I believe that if you truly want to know where the state of a people lies, you should go to the streets. And I thought you would be the perfect person to talk to, because you have been in this work for so long, and really the way the news has framed your activism and really kind of Ferguson as it relates to the series of protests that have come through America in the last 5 or 6 years, like Ferguson really started this current conversation that we're having around police brutality and around activism and around being Black in America. And so I guess really I want to start with, how are you? And if you could sum up the state of Blackness in America today in 3 words, what would it be?
Okay, well, at least I can use more words to answer how I'm doing. So I'm tired. I am very sleepy. I need to take a nap. But other than that, for the personal today, I'm actually doing really well. My mother's 7-year anniversary of passing was 6 days ago. And I don't know, something about the year 7, it's my favorite number. Maybe there's just some type of magic in the number, period. I don't know. But this is like the first anniversary of hers that I've had where I wasn't like balled over weeping. Sure. And that felt really good. So I'm just like acknowledging all the blessings that I think have come directly from my mom in my life right now. And yeah, I'm just in that space, really just being like appreciative for the Black woman who raised me. As far as Black people in America and where we are today, well, I would say resilient is always a word for us. Creative, because we think fast on our feet when dealing with white supremacy and all of its atrociousness. And I think the last word I would use is joyful, because I think that's what white supremacy hates the most, that Black people keep joy in our hearts.
Yeah, that is, I think, that's so interesting. I think it's so common for people in general to kind of seek happiness. I know for me personally, I've always said I'm looking for joy. I don't need like this consistent happiness every day, but these large moments of joy that I find is real. That is what it's fulfilling to me. And there's actually a piece on our site called In Search of Black Joy. And the idea that you find it in these moments that are surrounded by pain, but it's almost like this little bubble, right? And it kind of like, it's like a bubble of comic relief that makes it all feel a little bit better.
Yeah, the fact that like we can make jokes out of literally at the worst times ever. Like we should be super serious right now, but can't So yeah, like it's just that I don't know what that is about us, but I think it's in the DNA, truly.
And it's also it's almost resourcefulness. It's like when the world gives you very little to be happy about, you kind of have to find it. You have to take it
Anywhere.
just wherever you can.
Yes.
And there's never a bad moment to smile or to find joy or to fall in love or to laugh, because like whenever it comes, I have to be grateful for it because it may never come again.
Yes.
I wanted to. It's so interesting that you talked about your mom, because when I was kind of preparing for this interview and I was thinking kind of what I wanted to ask and kind of the conversation I wanted to have, I really wanted to spend some portion talking about your mother and your upbringing, because it's something that I don't think enough people ask Black women what their mother taught them and what it means to be a Black woman. And I
Mm.
think, and that first concept came to me the first time I saw my friend's adopted sister, my white friend. He has a Black adopted sister, and his parents, who are also white, were having a hard time dealing with her. And I remember telling him, this is irresponsible because you all are not equipped to teach this little girl how to be a Black woman in America. And that notion of like, what does it mean to be taught how to be a Black woman in America? So what can you tell me about your mom and about your upbringing?
Oh my goodness. My mother, she was everything, truly. A beautiful, dark-skinned Black woman from St. Louis, Missouri, who had me at 20, 21. She was on her way to art school in New York when she got pregnant with me and put that up on the side. She just went ahead and put that dream to the side and was committed to having her baby. Nobody could tell her any different. And so she went to cosmetology school instead, just sticking with the art still. Like my mom was super creative, very into like painting and sculpture. And she was also into like astrology. So I just get all these little things from her. But she went to beauty school, opened a beauty salon with my grandparents. And I think we had it for like 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
So she was in her early 20s and owned a six-figure beauty salon. Um, with that, she used that money to send me to private schools. So I went to um, private Catholic institutions until maybe my junior year of high school
Oh wow.
when my sister came. So I had to share resources. Okay.
It's different now. It's not the
It's
same.
different. So yeah, I just used to go. I went to these all white schools, and then I would literally leave these white schools and go to the beauty shop. Black women only, all black everything. My grandma's there. She's washing hair. She's prophesying to people. She's praying over folks. She's doing whatever. My aunt was there, ripping and running and keeping everything up. And then like all my mom's friends, like, like especially with her being gone now, a lot of her clients and I still keep in touch. Or
Mm.
they see me on something, they're like, oh my God, Lil Netta. I'm like, yes. So she was everything. She was brilliant. She could cook. She was so funny. She was super charismatic. She had a great smile. I would call her like she was like the '90s hot girl for real. Like before
Period.
Megan the Stallion, we had Rolanda, okay, and her name was Miss Ree, and she took no shit. I hope I can curse, but
Please.
she took no shit. And I just saw my mom handle business in multiple ways, and she never played about me, and she never played about family. Her being dark skinned and me going to these white schools and me not being as dark as my mother at all, or really anyone else in my family. And I don't consider myself light. I think I'm like a light brown, but at an all white school. And if you don't look
Yeah.
like a dark skinned woman, you definitely, people are like, oh, well, is she, what's that? Like, is she special? What's happening?
Are you
And
exotic? It's like no.
right,
Black.
like, nope, black on black. Okay, my daddy black, everybody's black. um, but I definitely noticed teachers and students would treat me differently And then when they saw my mom or my grandmother or like my grandpa would come pick me up, it was just always like, she's actually one of them. Like, oh, she's black. Like they would forget I was black or something until my family came around. But that's like tokenization and them thinking like, oh, well, she's different. I'm not
She's one
different.
of us. She's here. Right.
Right. And no. um, so my mom and I and my grandmother, they had to defend me all the time at school against like the principal or the nuns who are our teachers for little small trivial things like I hit puberty and my puberty looked different than the white girl's puberty. So my uniform fit me a little different than what the white girls were looking like in their uniforms when they hit puberty. So like the policing of my body at a young age. My grandmother and my mom had to regulate basically like here's what you won't do with my child.
Right.
So yeah, that was my mom. She was just everything. She was sweet, she was funny, she could definitely be she was a Virgo. So, and I'm an Aries. So I definitely, was her first wild child. I bust down the door, broke all the rules. And then here came my little sister 11 years later, sweet as pie. She don't try to take advantage of none of the leeway I gave her. So like on her prom, she's like, oh, I came home at 2. What? I fought for you to have 6 a.m. curfew, maybe
You
even
fumble
stay
in the
out.
bag, sis. You don't respect yourself.
You don't respect me or what I've done. So yeah, but that's my mom. She was everything.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I wonder what was that like growing up where you, in a lot of ways, Black beauty and the complications of what it means to be a Black woman, from your hair to the way your body develops. I wonder how that played out with you having a mom who was in beauty. Like, do you think that she was like more well-versed to like prepare you? Do you think maybe she, in a lot
Oh,
of ways, had adapted certain things?
she did not play. Because my grandmother didn't play and my great grandmother did not play. Like I just come from a long line of Black women from Arkansas who do not play.
Right.
So because my grandmother never played any games with my mom and my mother was darker than my grandmother, and me coming out significantly lighter than my mom, um, everyone just had to be aware of how we dealt with each other and how we saw each other.
Mm,
So I never grew up thinking that darker skin was ugly. I
mm.
always was like, everybody in my family is so chocolate. Oh my God, like what is going on? Do I need to do I need to go
I
to
need to get a
the gym?
tan.
How do I get what they got? What's going on here? So I just always grew up appreciating that everybody, like all my little childhood pictures, everybody in my family chocolate. And you could just see me just like loving it up. Like I just love my family. And I love that we always celebrated being Black without even having to like announce it. Like there was never like, like we have I'm black and I'm proud t-shirts and buttons and stuff like that. But it was never like we walking through the house like, oh, you mighty Black today. Like it was just like,
Peace, my sister.
yeah, it was always like my mother was on some, I will not let the world have you. Like she would always say that. As in like, I'm gonna teach you what's right here. And when you go out into the world, whatever you experience, you'll be set. Like you're prepared for anything. And then she would say, well, everything that every Black mama says, I brought you in this world.
Thank
I'll take you out. Which means when I went out in public and I was without her, she knew how I was behaving because I knew how I was raised.
you.
And I'm still even that way today because I'll be like, I don't know where she at in the spirit world. She might. I just don't play with people. I like to keep it respectful with anybody, really.
Sure.
That's just
Well,
my.
and I think there's also like I think with most Black families, there's like that notion of like, you don't embarrass us.
Don't
Like,
embarrass.
everybody knows you my kid.
Yeah.
Like keep that trash in the house.
Yes. And even now, like with yesterday, some of her clients wrote on my post on Facebook, and I was like, I can't do nothing. I can't do nothing without somebody from this lady life being like, oh, hi, I saw you. So that's why she was just so like, you're going to be damn near perfect when you walk out this house. But I also feel like she created a lot of space for me to enjoy being a carefree black girl.
Mm,
Like I wasn't that many restrictions I felt from life or the world. My restrictions were from my mom. Like, no, you can't go over there. I've never met that person's parents.
right.
Or like, nah, you ain't going to the mall 2 days in a row. But it was never like, Mom, I want to write this thing and what do you think about it? She would never be like, oh no, that's awful. Or like when I wanted to Girl Scouts or any interest that she saw that I had, she would hone in on it immediately.
Mm. I wonder, and how do you think, what did that do for you?
Oh, I mean, it's just a complete reality shift. Like in some ways, I grew up in a reality that a lot of people I know did not have, So yes, I have a single mother, but she was able to use her time and talent, her skill to turn it into a six-figure business without a college degree. So I've never seen Black people do without just because they don't have degrees. So,
Right.
like, living in this world where everyone is telling me over and over and over, like, you can't be great, you can't do this unless you have a degree. Like, education has to happen, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, that's true. And I am smart. I like learning. Like I went to school last year and it was eventful. Um, but some people just aren't first for certain things. Maybe in my life I will be a university academic person, but I don't believe that that's who I am right now. And because of my mom and because of my grandparents and what I've saw and seen them accomplish, I know that that's a possibility for me in my life. Like I can't do this without what society tells me I have to have.
Right.
So that just shifts everything, right? Because if it's like this in one way on the path of education, why doesn't that apply to anything else in life?
Right.
So I've always just been like, I saw my mom do it, and she did that 30 years ago without half the technology or half the connections that I have right now. And I always use that to motivate me.
Well, and I also think that in a lot of ways, I think Michelle Obama does a really good job of explaining kind of why education matters. She's like, you don't have to go to school. It could be harder for you.
Yeah.
And as long as you know that, and you like, if you're willing to do it, as long as you know that you are going to, there are things you can't do without a degree. You can't become a doctor without a degree. As long as you know that, if you don't want to
Mhm.
become a doctor, that's really an irrelevant fact,
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think it's all about the way in which people frame the information, right? And like, and making sure you get like to give kids, or I mean, like you grown, so like giving everyone the autonomy.
Relevant information, though.
Right.
Yeah, it's relevant information, and like you have to empower your students, period.
Yeah.
Already coming here and I don't feel empowered and I am who I am.
Right.
I can only imagine how a 18-year-old with no experience and no I guess the self-assurance to speak and talk up,
Right.
you're
Yeah.
18, this your professor, you think that the professor tells you they're always right, you think they're always right, you would not question anything that's happening. So it
I can
wasn't a
honestly say that university was not the best thing that ever happened to me. I went to college.
no,
I went to a very competitive school, and across the board, it wasn't, they weren't even microaggressions, they were macroaggressions from everyone. I went to a predominantly white school and I remember every school has like a multicultural center, and
right.
the gay Black man who was ahead of the multicultural center, he pulled me aside because they had like an orientation for Black kids, and I was like, I feel like someone should have asked me if I needed to be in this course. Oh, this is how you act around white people. And I'm like, I grew up in a white city. Like, I know white people. Like, I don't need this. And I remember he told me, I think you'll find it very hard to do well here. And I was like, huh, that doesn't feel good, right?
What does that mean?
Right. And like,
I mean, we know what it means, but
to be clear, I graduated top of my class with honors. Thank you very much. But like,
yeah, I got a 4.0 last semester, a 3.75 this first semester, and I was
right.
just like, this is not. Sorry, like
And
I know I
that's
can
what you
do
needed.
it.
Like, I know I
Yeah.
can do this. I don't want to.
Yes,
And
that's
as long as you can say that with your whole chest, I don't think anything else actually matters.
yep. So we're not
And
doing that.
so,
But I will say, I think I am going to take a different route. Bachelor's, no, but I did learn that there's another way to like get a master's without getting your bachelor's.
oh,
So I'm
sure.
like, okay, cool. Yes. Like, talk to me about grown things, like,
Right. And
just
talk to me about what you want to do. It's like you have created a legacy for yourself where there's a very good chance that your future doesn't include you working a 9 to 5 in somebody else's cubicle. And so it's like there's education that I can benefit from having. Perhaps it's not in this setting. Perhaps it's not,
yeah,
with these letters behind my name. But I mean, sure, recommend a book. Give me a class. Share the
right. Give me
knowledge.
a course, sign me up for whatever.
Right.
I'm cool with all of that. Mm-hmm.
And so, when did you first? So I know, I guess the internet tells us that you really first got engaged with activism with the murder of Mike Brown, and so I wonder when did you first realize that being Black could have a price tag on it?
I think it would be, I'm trying to think, was it the Jenna Six or Troy Davis? Either one of those.
Mm.
Probably Troy Davis.
And
Recent.
what about that?
I think I remember it was like the early days on Twitter, right? This is when Twitter was the Wild Wild West. There wasn't no rules, no nothing. But Troy Davis's story like was just everywhere. And so I'm like, okay, well let me read this. Like what's going on? And I was just so upset. Like I read all the things, and like I read all the petitions and like everything that all the lawyers and attorneys working on his case and the advocates who were trying to get his execution overturned. And I just remember, like I still remember reading that the execution had happened and just being like, damn, even when like the facts, even when the facts aren't what you convicted this person for, you will still kill them. Like, and it was just like, damn, this country is that bloodthirsty. Why? And then like the year after or a while after that, it was Trayvon. Um, we didn't do much in St. Louis. We had like rallies. A friend of mine had organized a rally on the south side of St. Louis, and people were mad and angry, but we didn't have really anything to do. Like there was nothing more to do.
Right.
February of 2014. So, like I said, 6 days ago, my mom, it was her 7-year anniversary. And in maybe like a week, I will be reaching the 7-year anniversary of one of my very close friends, Stefan Avery Hart, being shot and killed by the St. Louis City Police
Mm.
behind his house in an alleyway.
Mm.
So no, my activism did not start with Mike Brown. It actually, I was moved to actually participate in whatever was happening with Mike because the police had killed Stefan. And
Right.
because my mother had just died, I was so caught up in like that depression. I
Sure.
couldn't even really unpack that my friend had been killed.
Mm-hmm.
So like when my other friend had called me, his neighbor, and called me and told me what happened, I was already feeling numb. So I really nothing registered about Stefan not being here
Mm.
until Easter that year. And I'm just looking at the door, expecting him to come in with his usual bottle and some jokes and, asking for a plate, demanding a plate, just being rude. And so I'm like, that's never gonna happen again.
Mm,
Like y'all really stole my friend, you
mm,
know, because that's what the shit feels like. Like you are stealing lives.
yeah,
And
right.
you don't even like his mother never, she never got a name of the officer who killed her son.
Mm,
Um, the witnesses were never interviewed. So they just like, case closed. They made like two or three articles about him
hmm.
and that was it.
Wow.
So that's what started me. That's what moved me and my best friend and a bunch of our other friends to go in August when Mike was killed.
Sure. I was watching a video of you, I think from your Essence shoot, and you had said, because you are an Essence cover girl, period, absolutely.
Period.
And you had said that you identify as an introvert, but that you felt safe in the protests because you felt like you could experience all the emotions that like that women aren't allowed to experience. You can have anger, you can be aggressive, and I wonder if you could like speak more to that.
So yesterday, it's actually so timely you even asked me this. Yesterday, this white woman on our team was like, Netta, I love the TNT piece because you are not shouting, you aren't yelling for your voice to be heard. You just got to speak at your normal tone and present your message. She was just like, that's how I experience you every day. I don't experience Netta with a bullhorn. But everybody in real life thinks that I'm Netta with a bullhorn 24/7, even though I'm always saying, like, no, I'm very introverted, don't really like being around a lot of people. And that was pre-COVID. Like I just did not like
Especially right now.
right. So now this is really my jam. Like, yes, I get to be in the house for days. Oh my God. Um, I not even I'm not even going to say that I never felt the ability to be loud or be super rowdy and expressive, like, because that would be untrue. Like, young, wild Netta was a whole different story. Like, 21-year-old me, not the same as 31. So I don't know when the introverted side of me really just kicked in. I think maybe 23, 24, and it got even like I became more of an introvert after my mom passed.
Sure.
Just went really deep into like, just into myself. The protests, which is so funny that there's like all maybe three or four pictures of me like actually with a bullhorn, because that wasn't really my jam. Like
Right.
I yell, sure. But rarely do I ever be like, oh yeah, give me the no, that was never me. Um, but it was just like, okay, I need to keep momentum up. I need to keep people hype. Like people need energy. Like we can't just be ho humming it up. So I do know that sometimes when I would grab the mic, that would mean something to people. Like,
Mm,
okay, like we can keep going,
right.
because people do need that. It's like a boost. And I'm not trying to just take the energy from other people while I'm trying to make sure that like we're going the right way, or if we maneuver over to the right too much, like the police are over there. Like I also used to stay in the back because the elderly folks would be in the back. And I just didn't believe that anybody should be walking by themselves.
Sure.
So there are a few times where I would just go hang in the back really quick or chill to the side or move to the front. It was just
Sure.
always all over. So I feel like I got to experience all emotions at the protest. Like there were some days I would just cry. Tear gas is an abortion agent. And I remember once my friend Bree and I were walking up somewhere on the south side in Shaw after Von Derek Myers was killed. And we were just walking and we were just starting to like look up what's in tear gas. I have asthma, so I just knew that it was just awful. But
Sure.
when we learned that, me and my friend Bree, who I'd known since maybe I was like 22, and she didn't have any kids at the time, and I don't have any kids, but we were talking about like, can we even have a baby after being tear gassed this many times?
Mm,
And we just kept saying like, I guess we're gonna see. I don't know. And then Bree has a 3-year-old now, So that warms my heart.
Yeah.
Tiffany has one of my other friends. She has two kids now, 3 and 1, I think. So it's like I get inspiration from knowing that we were in this place where we questioned everything. Like, will we live through tonight? Will we make it next week? Like, will we have money to pay bills next week? Like, what's gonna happen? And
Right.
now seeing like the not the result, but seeing like what people's determination led them to, like seeing these Black women have these babies,
Hmm.
that's beautiful to me because I know for a fact they were coming for our reproductive system when you sprayed us with that tear gas, or when you sprayed toddlers in strollers with tear gas. Like that stuff has significant consequences on the body,
Right.
but the police and state officials, nobody in our government, our local government, our state government gave a damn.
Right.
So Black women, we had to hold, like in that moment, that was something that we could relate to and hold each
Yeah.
other on.
And that's one of those things where I think people sometimes miss that when they say protesters are putting their bodies on the line, it's more than just one thing. It's not just a physical act of actually walking. It's like, no, there is risk involved that we don't know until later.
Yeah.
Like and I think it's something, it's a sacrifice in a lot of ways, in all ways, honestly. And I think there needs to be more conversation around the simple fact that protesting as a concept is legal. Policing as a concept is still legal. We have to find a way for these two things to engage on a level where certain things are non-negotiables. There should not be any abortion agents being used on people. Criminals are not. Like, I don't care if you think I don't care if you agree with the protest or not. The police should not be using anything that risks the bodies or the reproductive systems of a citizen, of a person, right? And it's like,
Expired tear gas at that.
I just think sometimes the humanity gets lost in the anger of conversations. And I mean, that's a different soapbox, girl. Don't get me started. But speaking of your protest, there is a video of you online at a protest in DC, and you're on stage, and I think you're standing
Oh,
next to maybe to Tamika Mallory, and there is, and you're telling your story about how many times you've been tear gas, and there's somebody in the background screaming, you're like, oh, like, I've marched for this. I love Mike Brown. I didn't know him, but I march for him and I protest for him every day. And somebody's screaming, so do we, so do we. And she's just screaming over you. And
are you talking about that Al Sharpton march?
maybe, and
Uh,
I was like, I wonder, because, and I think in a lot of times people see a Black Lives Matter protest and they just assume that all Black people are on the same page. And I said, like, Black people don't agree about shit. Like,
no,
like we don't agree about about how to do hair, about how to raise kids, about whose God we pray to. Like, Black people don't agree about normal shit, let alone whether or not we should be marching, right? And
right.
so I remember watching that video and thinking, like, what? How often does that happen where you feel like somehow, some way, someone who in theory you're marching for seems to have missed your message?
Oh my goodness. Well, we don't even have to use that lady as an example. What's really hard
Mhm.
is in the early days, because it doesn't happen often at all anymore. But in 2014 and 2015 and 2016, I made so many people uncomfortable because I am Black and plus size. So it was like, she giving the message. Why? Her, da 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 da. She fat. Look at her, under, like, look at da 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 da. When my magazine cover came out, it was awful. Like, but it
Jealousy.
also,
Ugh.
but it just taught me like so much too, though. Like, I actually, I don't know. It's not anything anyone else could say about me that I haven't heard already. So thankfully, nothing is new anymore. But yeah, I was just never expecting that part. Like, damn, I was supposed to lose 40 pounds before I came outside and gave a fuck about Mike Brown.
Right.
I'm sorry. That's wild. Like, and I'm also not out here for you to be looking at my body like that. Like, okay, that's a personal problem. You're not attracted to me. Oh well, I didn't ask. I'm not
Right.
asking you to be. I'm only asking you to hear what I'm saying and what I'm talking about.
Right.
So when that happened, it was like, okay, well, I'm not giving sex appeal in this moment. I'm giving truth and facts. So,
Right.
if you don't want to, if you don't find me attractive, that's not my
And
personal
is
problem.
that all? Does that come? Is that coming from men? Is that coming from other black men? Is it coming from white people?
oh well, then all three. I'm like, yeah, it would be both. I would have, white people and the white trolls. They're gonna say whatever they're gonna say
Right.
anyway. So it would just really impact me when black people would say it.
Right.
Then I also have to take a step back and really think about what is social media right now
Right.
and recognize troll farms and just literal agents of chaos who are typing this and probably don't even give a fuck about me, don't care about me at all, just want to irritate me. So that helped me remove all the value out of like any of those kind of comments.
Yeah. I can't. I have no words. I need to process that. Even the notion that your weight is coming up during. I don't. Yeah. I don't have the capacity for that. I'm not gonna lie.
A wild one.
It
So
does.
imagine if I was my size and dark skin. Like I could only imagine, you
Right.
know?
I always think that I'm always having these moments where when something happens that kind of shakes me, I'm always like, I can't imagine what it must be like to be someone who doesn't have my certain set of privileges. Like because
Yep.
and I always say that, especially because in Asheville, where I'm from and where I live now, I've lived in Raleigh, New York, but I'm from Asheville. I'm here now. My parents are from here, and so my dad's like my dad. It's not weird to say that my dad is a big fish in a small pond. More so, Asheville is 90% white, so we're just the only black people around. Really, there's not a lot of black people here. So it's not hard for me to kind of be well known in that way. And so I'll always tell people, it's like, if I'm uncomfortable, imagine what it must be like to be like a McDonald's worker with no degree and no privileges and nothing. Imagine them having the same conversation. If I am uncomfortable and I have every privilege in the world, I can't imagine what it must be to be a dark-skinned black woman, trying to maneuver these situations. And it's amazing to me that I think people sometimes they forget. Same we were talking about earlier when we were talking about oh, they stole this person from me. It's I think people in their anger and in the moment, people forget that at the receiving end of all of this conversation, this action, this tweet is a person who has to answer to their God, to their mother, to themselves. And you are putting something on them without any care about the consequences. It's crazy.
I think it goes back to a thing that just came back to me about my mom,
Sure.
and what she taught me and why I said like she would always say, I'm not gonna let the world have you.
Mm,
Well, part of that was she built me up so tough. Like I just sure you could call me fat a million ways to Sunday, but you can't tell me I'm not pretty. You can't tell me I'm not beautiful. My mother has told me that my whole life.
mm,
But my grandmother also taught me no one likes a pretty dummy. So you can't say that I'm dumb. You can't say that I'm not smart, because like those two things were like, hey, you are beautiful. Don't let nobody tell you you're not. And I needed that, especially going to those white schools
mm.
where, again, me and my looks, I'm in here serving paper curls and like spritz and freeze, whatever move my mom was in.
Yes.
And these country girls I went to school with were not ready for me and my looks. And so like my mom would always be, I did your hair that way and it's fly. And that's that. And you tell them they don't have no sense of taste.
Exactly. It's like that video of Nicki Minaj. So like, every woman in here is gonna love this jacket. Please, you wearing a denim vest.
Please, what do you know? And then also when it comes to like my sister is beautiful brown skinned girl, and I don't know. I think I could end the whole world over that one right there.
Mm,
So I appreciate, and like we've had conversations about what does it mean that mom was her complexion, my sister is her complexion, and I'm mine, and how does that like affect her in her life? Um, and so my biggest thing is always making sure I'm kicking down every door for my sister.
right,
And that's like how I will use the privilege I do have of not being the same complexion of my sister to make sure I make space for her all the time, her and all her little brown friends, because they
right,
all look like all her little friends, like everyone. I'm like, okay, I'm acknowledge it. That's true. That's facts. I have privileges my sister does not. And I think it's important for me to even say that because she is my sister. I'm not gonna play her, you know,
right. That's
and
you gotta
gaslight her.
you gotta name all of this stuff. It's
Yeah,
like,
let's like name it. Let's own it and let's do something with it. Like, okay, that means I can go do something real quick for you that you probably wouldn't be able to go do, or have a conversation with somebody you wouldn't be able to have. And that's fine. I'm fine
right,
with that.
yeah,
And I'm gonna get in here and I'm gonna ragtag that ass and be like, let's talk about how privileges let me in this door and not my sister.
oh
That's
god,
what I'm into.
right. The last thing I wanted to kind of touch on was I was reading that in 2014 you were working a lot with the Mapping Police Violence Project, and
Hmm.
I just wonder for someone who has experienced X amount of death, and for someone who is really engaged in a fight against police violence, what was it like for you to really dive deep into the numbers of police violence, and like what did you come out of that knowing, learning, feeling?
I think actually, so in 2014, we got hit with all the annoying questions and all the annoying, well, what do you want? Like, what does it take to get you out of the street? Blah, 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 blah. Because St. Louis absolutely knew and was always on guard because at any moment we was popping up. And not only we popping up, we shutting everything down, we finna inconvenience everyone.
Mm,
Um, so in 2015, our answer to that question of what do you want was putting together that 10-point policy plan on ending police violence in America, which was Campaign Zero. Since then, we have moved away from some of the 10 points that are proven to not work or don't improve anything, like
mm.
body cams. Body cams are just up in the air. Some people like them, some people hate them. Sometimes,
Also, we get the cam footage and nothing's happened, so like,
right. Or you get cam footage and it's the worst. So you're just like, what the, like, it's such a toss up.
yeah,
Um, but it was really crucial to put something out tangible from the movement space so people could stop trying to not take us seriously.
right,
And the data, the numbers, St. Louis remains an outlier in many ways at being Black people are the most likely to be killed in St. Louis City. Really wild. Um, Coming from there, living there, always being at home, like seeing the numbers actually match the lived experience.
sure,
That is, for some people, that's the proof that they need. But in the world where I live, I take Black people's word. Like I know my lived experience. I
right,
didn't need data to
sure,
back up that I know the St. Louis police in the county and in the city are atrocious. I did not need that.
right,
But the numbers for folks who, I mean, for me, I think the for data, like the need to see numbers, that's rooted in racism because you don't believe what Black people say until you see it in black and white.
right,
But now we have the black and white, and there are still people who are like, "Oh, this is like the numbers are made up." It's just like, okay, you all will take anything and keep adding to it. Like, okay, well, this is another roadblock. That's not enough. This another roadblock. You know.
right.
So it's an answer to people who were wondering how the numbers are across America.
Sure.
It is a helpful tool to see how we're tracking. Like last year, even with a pandemic, even with shutdowns, not shutdowns, whatever, the police still killed more people in 2020. That was the second deadliest year for police violence.
Wow.
The first deadliest year was 2018.
Wow.
So even after 2014, everything that happened in Ferguson, everything that happened across the country,
Right.
Eric Garner was in 2014, the police still chose to outdo themselves. And they outdid themselves in a pandemic. Like that is why, like we're talking
That's
about wild,
intention. That's intention.
this is wild shit. Yes, that is very much intentional, you know? So that's why I do appreciate the numbers being able to say, like, you tell a story. You can use the numbers to tell a story.
Sure. And I know a lot of times people want the numbers. And I think one thing I do a lot of work with nonprofits in my work, but also just personally. And a lot of times, like with like nonprofits and you're writing and they want grants, they want like how many people. And it's always like one is enough. Like
Yeah.
if one child learns to read because of this, that's enough. If one person feels more seen, heard, or validated, that's enough. And if one person gets shot down in the street, that is enough.
That's enough for me.
I don't need proof of that it's raging. One is too many. That's not the world we're supposed to, that's not the America we're supposed to live in, right?
Yeah, I say all the time, there are people in this country right now who live in an existence, in a reality where they never have to be on the couch grieving someone who's already dead and get news that someone who was minding their business is now dead because of a police officer. Like I have white friends who will never have that story,
Sure.
who never have heard gunshots overnight all the time. Like,
Sure.
just don't know that part of life. So,
Sure.
of course, like I said earlier, with my existence of, I saw my family do one thing my whole life, so I refused to take on any of society's bullshit around like you have to do this and that.
Right.
I could see how if I only lived in a world where everything was a yes, my credit score was perfect from birth, and nobody ever took my social security number and like paid a bill. So if I lived in that kind of world, then yeah, I think I would have a hard time grappling with everything that was going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's no excuse though, because you still benefit from that ignorance because it's ignorance.
No, I think I started this conversation wondering, where we were. And through this conversation, this hour with you, I have heard joy and sadness and heartbreak and hope and ambition and progress and anger. And I think that is exactly where we are. We are smack dab in the middle of
All things.
a revolution. And I am thrilled to live in a world where you are leading that revolution.
Oh, thank you.
So I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really had a splendid time.
Awesome.
And it.
Period.